Some of the statistics that you were quoting, both about Egypt's use of water and both Tajikistan and Uzbekistan's use of water that is coming from the outside of their country, is just a bit overwhelming from countries like the United States that have so many of our own water resources. Let me note, in California, I'm not I'm not sure exactly what percentage of California water comes from the outside, which will lead me to a question about, I guess, is desal being used at all, Dr. Sullivan, in Egypt?
It is being used in the Sinai for some of the hotels and for some of the military bases and also on the north coast. But part of the problem is that about 98% of the population of Egypt lives on the Nile, and the Nile stretches all the way to the Sudan from the Mediterranean, and you can't desalinate the Nile. What you'd have to do is have huge pipeline systems set up to bring the desalinated water from either the Mediterranean or from the Red Sea or from other parts of...
Isn't Cairo near the ocean?
Well, it's actually many miles from the ocean.
That's interesting, yes.
It's a good 2.5 hour drive to get to Alexandria from Cairo. And for that water to move from the Mediterranean Sea to Cairo would be extremely expensive infrastructurally, and also it takes a lot of energy. If they set up solar desalination plants, that may be a better way of doing things. They already have a shortage of gas. They're a net importer of oil. A country that, when I was living there in the 1990s, was a country that was hoping for great exports of oil and natural gas.
Also, what we're talking about is projecting what could be, but what isn't. And I would say my own observation of how close things are, how far things are away, it all depends on your perspective. And being 2 hours from the ocean may or may not be a long way for certain societies.
Well, in LA, that's just across the corner.
That's right.
But at Cairo, the traffic is difficult. But I'm talking about on a Friday morning during an Eid. It's a long distance.
Mm-hmm. We actually get our water from a lot of water from the Colorado River, but we also now have made a large investment in developing new desal technology, which may have an impact on the Egyptian problem, because at least it could provide some areas that have some access to the ocean or the Mediterranean Sea or whatever, the Red Sea as well, a means of having fresh water, because the price of desal is going down. I'm on the science committee, and I can tell you that the new inventions by Lockheed of use of graphene in your system will bring down the cost of energy cost of desal, and thus will bring down the cost dramatically. Whether or not how long that takes to put in place that type of desal project, and with the energy level that is still required by that, it may or may not come in time. Is there anyone right now involved with trying to mediate or arbitrate a difference between Ethiopia and Egypt?
Well, President El-Sisi has had many discussions with the Ethiopians. There are conciliatory moves, including some trade deals. The rhetoric has been calmed down, certainly since the regime of President Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, if water stress comes in an extreme manner to Egypt, there's a very good chance the Brotherhood will come back, because it will be a failure for President El-Sisi. There are many people trying to find some middle ground here.
Is there any international organization that we have now that we can call upon to do that?
Well, there's the Nile Basin Initiative.
Right.
And
is that seeking to mediate, or is that or to arbitrate this dispute, or is it just there to try to facilitate communication?
Facilitate communication, it's also rather toothless on this one.
Oh.
When you have two countries that are at odds, it's very difficult to find a middle ground. The United States may act as a convener in some place distant from their two countries.
So you would think the United States, we could step forward and offer both of these countries to play a mediation role or an arbitration role?
We could, and it also may be a way to repair some of the damage to U.S.-Egyptian relations that occurred with the cutting back of military aid in a time when they needed it the most, and then they turned to Russia, which right now seems to be a problematic country for the United States.
That happened with a dam in the past, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. That would be the Aswan High Dam. But desalinization, getting back to that doesn't seem to me to be sufficient, and it certainly would take time to ramp this thing up.
Well, it certainly wouldn't be sufficient in the Central Asian republics because they're not near the ocean at all. Let's just note that we did convince the Ethiopians at one point to agree to arbitration of a major dispute that they were in with Eritrea. And this has happened during the last administration, so you know this is not a partisan remark, but I thought the behavior of our government in that whole episode was disgraceful and has undermined our ability to arbitrate other disputes, in the sense that Ethiopia, the decision of the arbitrators went against Ethiopia in their border dispute with Eritrea, and we extracted some kind of other deal with them to help us with some sort of defense-related deal, and let them off the hook. Basically said they didn't have to follow their arbitration, which meant that the message to all of Africa was, you better skip out the arbitration because that just doesn't work. Even the Americans are going to discard it. What the result is, that was very sad. I would hope that we could come up with someone who could help arbitrate between Ethiopia and Egypt on this. Your testimony is, from what I take from your testimony, is that if the Ethiopians do take a longer period of filling this dam up with water, a long period of time, it may not be harmful. It's possible that both sides could actually come out of this okay, as long as the Ethiopians were filling their dam in a responsible way. Is that correct?
When you're in a country such as Egypt, which is using 98% of its water, there's only a 2% leeway there. And to see only 2% reduction is probably a low probability event. When they're filling this thing up, they want to fill it up as quickly as possible. Yes, there is a possibility for negotiating a slow fill, but in order to not damage Egypt, it would have to be over many, many years.
That should be something that maybe they could be negotiated, perhaps.
Perhaps, but it also leaves Ethiopia in a position of controlling the water tap. If at any time it needs to control that water for the next famine, for the next drought, and then Egypt is shut off. During the 1980s, 1984 in particular, Egypt was damaged from this, and there wasn't even a dam there. Egypt is possibly in a much riskier situation now that this spigot is there, which a hydro dam could be, and you add an irrigation, it gets even worse.
I think that we have got to be very sensitive to that, to make sure that that outcome does not happen. The Egyptian government right now is pivotal to peace in that region, and for us to, the people of Egypt have to know that the United States, the people of the United States are on their side in making sure that they do not wake up one morning and find the actions of another government, whether it's Ethiopia or whoever, has dramatically negatively impacted on their economic well-being. So today I would just call on our government, the United States government, to do what it can to make sure that the Egyptian people are never put in that spot where a decision made in Ethiopia or some other government will bring their economic well-being down, their standard of living down, cause suffering among their people. That is unacceptable as an alternative. Hopefully the United States, our government, will take that as a priority and try to get and solve this problem in some sort of role that we can play.